All right, good morning, guys. Today I'm doing reading, which I'm gonna say is March 10th. And for March 10th, I'm actually covering chapters 9 through 11. I just have to say I did deviate from the plan. And one of the things that I know that, this whole Bible reading for me is about being intentional about spending time with God. And I feel like the best way to do it, of course, is to get into His Word. But one of the things that I always want to make sure is that I'm not just reading, but actually spending time with him. So, being that today is a day that I'm playing catch up and I'm trying to get through, the recording for the days, I want to make sure that it's understood that as the days was passing, I was in my word and I was reading for that day. I didn't get to record until today, the 11th, but that the reading was done as opposed until we got to yesterday, March 10th. And I started reading chapter 9 so many times and I stopped because I was so full of distraction that I wanted to make sure that the word had my complete attention. So this morning is when I actually had a chance to sit down and get through chapters 9 and 11 through 11. And that's what I'm going to share on this recording. And then I'm actually going to take a pause and I'm going to come back and then I'm going to continue to catch us up for the 11th. Because again, it's like the reading for me is about being intentional and about spending time with God. And I never want to get into the habit of feeling like, oh, it's routine that I just got to get through these books this day. And not to walk away fully blessed because I didn't give God the time that, He desired when He actually had these words inspired and recorded for us to be able to have that relationship with Him. So today we're starting with chapter 9, and this is after Gideon. So we're in the book of Judges. And I love how it just continues to show how people will be people, but God will always be God. And so it's something that we can truly be gracious about and grateful for, right? So we start out with one of Gideon's sons, Abimelech, because what happened was after Gideon passed, it shows that he had 70 sons. So one of his sons, Abimelech, was like, would you be rather be ruled by one person or be ruled by all of these different people? So when he kind of gave his case to the people of Israel, they was like, well, we'd rather choose and be led by one person. And so Abimelech took that as permission to go ahead and actually kill all of his brothers. And only one of his brothers escaped and he managed to get away. And it said that his brother that came, which was the youngest, and it was like that he actually went and he spoke out against Israel for this because it shows that they give him a parable and he starts talking about trees. And I just think it's so significant because it was one of those things like, who gave you the right to choose one person? And it was almost like that person didn't acknowledge the significance of his brothers. And that's what the people failed to do. They failed to recognize the significance of Gideon's sons, who it was one of those things Gideon had done say such great things for them. Like, how dare you not honor everything in his sons, but you choose this one person. And so that one person he referred to as a thorn bush. And he said that the thorn bush that let the fire come out and devour the cedars of Lebanon. So it was basically like, because you chose this one thing, like you chose not to honor my father for all he has accomplished. And because of that, he had said, that something will come, right? And so he went back into hiding because I guess basically he wasn't a fool. And he realized that, his life very much was in danger and great harm could come to him. But after that happened, Abimelech was actually allowed to leave because the people did keep his word to them, right? And so we see God steps in, and it showed that God, we start, and this is chapter verse 22, where he said that God sent the spirit that stirred up trouble between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem, right? The place where he was allowed to come. And so, what they actually thought for themselves, now they want to question Abimelech's authority and say, okay, and even consider him less than because he was from a slave woman. So now they want to bring up, you understand who he really was and use it as something against him, right? So it shows that they prepared to go out and to fight him, but Abimelech, he was like, it's not going to be that easy. So he actually prepared, laid traps, and he was able to have victory. But then it showed that, and one of the things that's really significant is after he got victory, the people who he came against chose to go hide in a temple that was to Baal. And so it was one of those things. Not only did you come against this man, but now you're going to rely on a lesser god. So they put themselves inside a temple, and so this allowed Abimelech to actually cut down tree branches and set it on fire. And so that day we see that 1,000 people, men and women, died. So not only did you come against this man who was in leadership, but then when you saw that the power he had, you retreated to a lesser God. And by doing that, everybody got destroyed, right? And so now it's almost like Abimelech felt like he was invincible. And rightfully so. Like, he's walking around and he's doing all of these things, right? But now it's showing that there was a strong tower inside of a town, and the people barricaded themselves in that. And it was like now when Abimelech approached this tower because he wanted to do the same thing, it was like a woman looked down from the rooftop and she dropped a stone right on the top of his head. I'm telling you what God could do with a stone, and a person that's determined to see a change, a shift in the events of the things that have been placed on God's people. And when she dropped that stone, it hit him smack in the middle of his head. But he still managed to have like somebody from his army actually kill him because he did not want to go down as somebody who was defeated by a woman. And that says a lot. It says a lot. Like when you could get so far away from God and not realize what's going on, but what becomes important to you is almost like it's followed out by your last wish, right? So it shows that God had punished Abimelech for the evil that he had done, right? And it also showed that there was a curse, right? That it was fulfilled on like that his brother had spoke about, right? So as we move into chapter 10, it just now talks about different judges that came about. And it shows that each of them had about 20 years, and then they passed. And then it was like, again, the Israelites did evil in the Lord's eye, and they continued to serve images of Baal. So I went on the internet because I just see Bell as somebody who just keeps coming up. And I just got a little history on him from the internet. But of course, we know that this is not something that I'm going to totally rely on. But God is going to show me so much more when it comes to Bell. I'm believing him for that. But it was just showing that Bell was a fertility and storm deity worshipped by neighboring things. And so people chose to worship him as opposed to the true God. And being that the Israelites were intertwined with these people, they started worshiping that God. But that God became such a thorn in their side, I'm going to say, right? So now it sees that we go, right? And it's like they have these judges, but the people keep doing things against God. And so now it's showing something different because this time we're seeing another great shift. And a great shift this time is that when they were in great distress, they finally cried out to God for help. It's one of those things where so much went on before they even decide to cry out to God to acknowledge who he was. But then it says that God said, I will not rescue you anymore. This is in verse 13 of chapter 10. He said in verse 14, he said, go and cry out to the God you have chosen. Let them rescue you in your hour of distress. And then it's something that's really significant because then in the later verses it shows that then the Israelites put aside their foreign gods and served the Lord. So it was one of those things where they allowed the worship of other people to intertwine with them so much and to get so comfortable with crying out to God and seeing his hand come out and restore them that it became something that just was repetitive. That now they would even go to God and cry out for him, but still have other gods that they were worshiping. And it was like, okay, how do we get back? And one of the things that they had to do to get back, to get God's help, was not only cry out to him, but put aside all other things and now turn back their full worship and their service to God. Let that speak to you. Dig into these chapters and let like hear him clearly, right? And so now we go to chapter 11, right? And that's when we meet a new judge, which is Jephthah, right? And it shows that Jephthah was you know, the son of a prostitute, and so he fled. And it was one of those things where it was like that he was denied his inheritance, right? By the elders at that time. And so he fled and he put together like his own mishmash army, right? And so now when the people was in trouble and they was trying to figure out, well, who can we get to lead them? They decided to go to Jephthah. And Jephthah was basically like, wait, let me get this straight. So you guys denied me of my inheritance, but now that you're in trouble, you want to come to me, right? And one of the things that I kind of love about Jephthah is that when he was going and he was actually, and it actually says, let me get this straight. I'm in the NIV in verse 9, right? But he said that if the Lord gives me victory over the Ammonites, you will really make me ruler over all the people. So even though Jephthah had been denied his inheritance and he had created this life for himself, it wasn't absent of the Lord because he didn't say, oh, I'm so great, I can go and I can do these things that you're asking me for. No. He said, if the Lord gives me this victory, then let me understand that this is what you will do. And so it was one of those things where he needed them to acknowledge, you understand, in the Lord's presence, that what they were saying was actually what they would honor. But one of the things that Jephthah did in his response was he honored God greatly because he knew that in order for whatever was going to be accomplished, it wasn't going to be in his own strength, it wasn't going to be in his own will, but that it was going to be the Lord God who was going to give him that victory, right? So now this is another part because when you're in the Old Testament, they do a lot of revisiting of things that happened before them. And so it was like Jephthah didn't just take it upon himself now to get up and move, but he actually sent messengers, right? Um, no, I'm sorry. It was like that they said that, yeah, he did. He sent messengers to the king of Ammon. And he was asking him, like, why are you guys coming out to fight us? And so, of course, they responded. And they were like, well, we're coming to take back what's rightfully ours because you stole it. And then Jephthah responded. He was like, no, actually, this is what happened. And he recounted how the children of Israel asked for passage. He recounted how they were denied. He recounted how other people came out now to attack Israel and that God turned around and gave them the victory. And he even said, and so he kind of concluded with this when he says in verse 23, so you see, it was the Lord, the God of Israel, who took away the land from the Amorites and gave it to Israel. Why then should we give it back to you? You keep whatever your God Kamish gives you, and we'll keep whatever the Lord our God gives us. And that was just such a powerful statement because he didn't just pick up and run, but it was one of those things where he used a lot of wisdom. And I'm going to go with that. It was God given because it was one of those things like I'm not just doing it the way it's been done so many times before, but I'm showing a new precedent. But in the end, God is going to get the victory because I'm choosing to put my faith into the God of Israel. Now, you can put your faith into the God of the people that you choose to serve. And of course, the king of Ammon paid it no attention. And then it opens up with the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. And one of the things that Jephthah did was he promised God that if you give me victory over the Ammonites, I will give the Lord whatever comes out of my house to meet me when I return in triumph. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. So now he goes and he has victory. And now he goes home. And what comes out first? His daughter. And I think this is why I'm going to stop in this chapter today and continue with my day before I pick up with the next one. Because when his daughter came out, it immediately threw him into great distress because he was like, oh my goodness, what have you done? And it was like once the daughter realized what she did, she was like, by no means. She didn't ask for her life to be spared. She just asked for a time that she would be able to go for 2 months with her friends and weep because she knew that she was going to die a virgin. And it was just like to me, it just seems like such a way to end like such a great victory. But it's one of those things to honor whatever it is that you promised God. And it's like a lot of times we search for understanding, but Jephthah did honor his vow. And so after she went up for the 2 months, she came back and he kept his vow to God. And we see that it ends that this now became a custom of Israel that the young Israelite women would go away for 4 days each year to lament the death of Jephthah's daughter. So it was one of those things that God came back and it was after, so many times, but he still had to show up as God. And Jephthah, who was given a victory by God, still became a man that kept his word to what he was going to do for God. So, chapter 11 is heavy, but it shows how great God is and how he's willing to do things. And that you understand sometimes keeping our word might force us into weeping and crying and even lamenting. And it's almost like we're going to weep, we're going to cry. And if we have to come up with a way to lament yearly, then we're going to do it and we're going to walk it out because that's what we gave to the God who served us in such a great way. So I'm going to actually record because now I think I'm actually caught up to the 11th, which is today's actual date. And so I'll record that later because again, this is a word that I want to like sit with and let God deal with. I don't want to just run to like the next group of verses. So I pray this blessed you. All right.